We're going to change the subject now, and we're going to go to Dr. Sherri Tenpenny because she has been an illustrious guest on the Power Hour many times. She has credibility that just will not stop when it comes to being a physician herself in a practice, as well as investigating bird flu. New stories coming out about the bird flu today makes us want to ask her, is it real or is it Memorex or is it from a laboratory? But our guest today, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, joins us, and I want to thank you very much, Dr. Tenpenny, for joining us in the Power Hour today.
Thank you, Joyce, and good morning.
It is a pleasure to hear you again and to talk with you again. Well, Dr. Tenpenny, your interest in, most people seem to know your name when we talk about you because of all the wonderful good works that you have written on vaccines and the bird flu. But why your interest in these subjects? You had a very nice practice. You're a very beautiful woman, thriving the practice there in Ohio. And why did you sort of get into the subject of vaccines and bird flu?
I got into the subject of vaccines back in September of 2000 when I went to the National Vaccine Information Center meeting in Washington, and I walked away going, gosh, I've never really heard of this before. Maybe I ought to investigate it. Well, now it's been about 8,000 hours and seven years later, and I just have found an enormous amount of information that I've developed over through several different knowledge products to make that move forward and to just educate parents and know that they have a choice. When the bird flu started to come into the arena of the American public television networks back in, about a year and a half ago, I started looking at it mostly because of the connection with all of the things that they were going to be doing with the new flu shots. So I thought, well, I wonder what this is all about. And then after investigating that, I realized that this was another major pharma play to push forward the vaccines, and particularly the new flu shots. And it was just a way to get everybody all fired up and to get the pharmaceutical companies to have money from Congress to build new flu factories.
Now, what was the first year you said that you learned about the bird flu, that it came to your attention?
Well, I started the book that I wrote, Foul. I started it Labor Day weekend of 2005. And with the help of a marvelous researcher who helped me just plow through an enormous amount of information, I was able to get the book done by February. And it has over 360 footnoted references, which is about a third of the number of references I actually read. And so it was that weekend. And Joyce, the reason I remember that is because I was sitting out in my backyard writing with my laptop on my lap, starting to write this book on my anniversary. Oh. And so that's how I know for certain of that date.
Interesting. Well, you know, I got a phone call in 2004 from a lady who was a microbiologist that said that she was told, she worked for Homeland Security or bioterrorism organization there in, I'm not going to say what state she was in, but she called and said, there's going to be this thing called bird flu. We've been told to prepare for it. She says, I didn't even know what it is, but my brother listens to your program, and he said, why don't you call her and tell her about this, because that sounds like something that, you know, bird flu sounds like one of those, you know, dreamed up kind of things. Well, anyway, in 2004, she was told it was going to happen. She started realizing that they were almost manufacturing it or creating the agenda for it, and she finally quit. She said, I don't want anything more to do with this.
I think that that's really true, and I do remember you and I have had a conversation about that previously, and I remember you telling me that. And I know that the whole area of what's happened with that is continued forward, even though they don't talk about it much here in the U.S. press. I mean, what we actually hear about in the international press is hundreds of articles that come out every week, still talking about all of the different things that that's happening in the international market.
Well, and Science Daily today said, you know, the fear is now being reignited in Canada with this new finding that in the UK several people have been hospitalized, they say, with H5N1. So it sounds like they're upping the ante.
I'm sure that they are. I get the Google bird flu news every day. I don't always read them because there are so many of them and because not many people are paying attention to it here in this country. But I really think that it's going to happen at sometime sooner or later, and particularly now that they have just approved the new flu shot in the UK, and it's the one that's going to be made from dog kidney cells and they are actually already using the flu shots in the UK for children that have MF59 in it. So I think now that
I want you to explain MF59. I did not know that. Tell people about that because I am familiar with that from Gulf War illness.
Yeah, MF59 is a squalene-based adjuvant that was actually used in experimental animals to increase the reactivity and of the flu vaccine, so that once it's injected into your system, the adjuvant makes you have more antibodies, and to make that go up to a higher level. Well, they started using MF59 in flu shots back in the UK back in the beginning part of 2006. And what they've shown with MF59 is that in 75% of experimental animals, it causes debilitating arthritis to the point where the animals can not walk across their cage, and that they have autoimmune diseases and start developing severe arthritis because of that particular adjuvant. And they were using it in pediatric flu shots back in 2006, and I remember reading the first article about it that came out in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and thought, oh my gosh, now they're going to start injecting this terrible toxic stuff into children.
And we know that squalene was used, MF59 and squalene was used as an adjunct or adjuvant to the Gulf War vaccines. And, of course, what are the problems that Gulf War veterans have? They have debilitating arthritis now and autoimmune diseases. So do we know when they began experimentally using MF59 before they were adding it, with people's knowledge?
I really don't. I don't know how far back that went. I just remember when I first read that article in the medical journals, it was about spring of 2006. So if they were already doing it and it had been proved through various places in Europe at that point in time, obviously they had been doing clinical trials for 1 to 2 years before that.
Yeah, and if it is true that our evidence that it was used during the Gulf War, that would be 1991, that they were doing even some earlier clinical trials, which obviously were clandestine covert trials with classified agents. So, this is all speculation, but the Department of Defense denied it at one point, and then we got the confirmation later on that MF59 was used or squalene was used. It is not a good thing, though, even though there is a natural form of squalene that comes from, I believe it's dolphins. This is not a good squalene, is it?
No, and what really makes the truth about it, Joyce, is what Gary Matsumoto says in his book Vaccine A, which I know that you're a big fan of, and so are a lot of your listeners. And I love, there's a quote that he says that just says it all to me, is that squalene is an oil. It's in all of our cells. It's in the cells in between our bodies. It comes from shark oil. And when you eat it, it's really a good thing for you. But when you inject it into your body, it has an entirely different mechanism of action. And I love one of the things that he says in his book, where he says if you were to take a cheeseburger and put it into a blender and grind it up and inject it into your body, you probably wouldn't feel very good the next day. And I think that that's the same thing that happens with this adjuvant inside of the flu shot or inside of the anthrax vaccine or any of the other types of shots that it may end up being inside of, is the fact that if you were to eat this oil-based molecule, it would not have any problem in your body whatsoever. But it has to do with injecting it into your system and then develop an autoimmune reaction, because that squalene is also on the surface of your cells. And so when your body creates an antibody to attack it and break it down because it's been injected, once the injected molecule has been neutralized, now it starts attacking the squalene that's on the surface of your cells, and that's where the autoimmune reactions come from.
We're going to be right back after this 4-minute break. Our guest today is Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. She's director and founder of OsteoMed 2, a clinic, and you guys are so lucky, in Strongsville, Ohio. birdfluhype.com. Check it out. Back in 4 minutes with Dr. Tenpenny.
Are things freer in America today than they were a couple years ago?
Broadcast stations we control induce complacency that don't let people think that they are free. Distractions broadcast on TV are influencing.
Welcome back to the Power Hour. This is Joyce Riley. Dave Von Kleist is not here today. He's on his way to New Hampshire. We have joining us Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. She is the director and founder of OsteoMed 2. This is a clinic in Strongsville, Ohio. You guys are so lucky to be able to go there and have her as your doctor. And she is located in Middleburg Heights, which is a Cleveland suburb. She's done an amazing amount of work in writing the books and doing the DVDs to educate us on the vaccine issue. And I encourage you to get those. We have them all at the Power Hour, the Vaccine Parent Manual. It's on special right now. We put it on special because of Sherri's appearance on the program. The Vaccines, Risk, Benefits, and Choices DVD. And one that we are just recently carrying that I think you're going to want to get, which is Vaccines, What the CDC Documents and Science Reveal. That's also a DVD, and it's on special for $21.25. Now, if you're one of those hard-hitting people that wants the evidence, the documentation, well, that's the one to get. It's $21.25, and you can call 877-817-9829, 877-817-9829. We're going to get into the vaccine issue in the next segment, and we will take your phone calls, also from you parents who may have never heard this before, given the fact that we're on XM radio, and people don't talk about the vaccine issue on XM radio. So go to Sherri's website, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny's website, which is drtenpenny.com, drtenpenny.com. There's all the information for you, and you can see the items that Dr. Tenpenny has written at thepowermall.com. Dr. Tenpenny, now back to the bird flu before we move into vaccines. Is the bird flu man-made? Does it come out of a laboratory? And how are we supposed to believe that this is really the truth?
Well, I think that it could very well be coming out of a laboratory. I mean, it really could be that because all you need to do is, like, put together the H antigen and the N antigen and sort of spin it, and it could come out to be whatever you want. I think that what's more important to know about it, though, and the reason why this keeps happening in Southeast Asia and Europe, is because of the connection between influenza viruses and the contamination in the environment. The dioxin in the environment, particularly in Southeast Asia and Vietnam, where they keep having these outbreaks over and over again. The dioxin has persisted there since the 1970s, since that country was pulverized with Agent Orange. Mm-hmm. It's also into China and into Indonesia and all of those areas because of the burning of plastics in China that goes into the water supply. In Indonesia, the Japanese ship their garbage there, and it is burned. And so when plastic is burned, it releases dioxin. Another major source of dioxin is pulp and paper mills, which in Indonesia has the highest concentrations of pulp and paper mills of any country in the world. So we keep mutilating millions of chickens and killing them and vaccinating them with horrible vaccines that has been shown in the patent from the vaccine that if the chicken is vaccinated with that particular vaccine, that it makes the meat unfit for human consumption. So we're vaccinating the chickens with the vaccine. We keep killing them off and burying them in the ground. And what are we doing to the groundwater in those countries from having millions of tons of dead birds in there? And we are not correcting the problem or even addressing the problem. I found out a couple of weeks ago, Joyce, that there was a partial presentation of my information at the World Health Organization by the woman who runs the website, the International Science and Society. And she's in the UK, and I've written articles for her website, and she has my book, and she presents at the World Health Organization, and she sent me a clip of saying that she said to them, someone needs to look at the environmental connection between what's going on with the environment and what's going on with bird flu. So somebody needs to look at that. So whether they are manufacturing it in a lab, which they very well could be, the important part is what's going to make people sick, I believe, is the combination of that virus plus whatever their chemical contamination and exposure levels are.
So it's not a simple question of is it man-made or is it not. There's a lot of environmental effects. I just want to second what you said about burning plastic. One time there was some burning of some trash around here, and a plastic bottle was in it, and I had no idea what was going on. I started smelling it, and before long, I felt like my chest was just caving in. I could not breathe. I had to leave the property. I had no idea burning plastic could be so bad. So obviously, there are huge ramifications of this with respect to dioxin and what's taking place in Southeast Asia. We're going to be right back with Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. We'll take your phone calls Open up the phone lines, 800-259-9231. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny will be with us until the top of the hour. Back in 3 minutes. Stay tuned.
You're listening to GCN, the Genesis Communications Radio Network.